Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Sci-Fi Chronicles again. We're taking a delve away from Doctor Who this week, and we are going down to review the wonderful Raiders of the Lost Ark. And with me again is the legendary retro doc Gary Akers. Sporting a superb cap yet again. And we've also
I don't
got...
have an Indy cap.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you will be. And then we've also got the legendary Sarah Starry-Eyed Girl. And
Yay.
look what she's
friend.
brought. Yeah, look, she's been out hunting in Sheffield Zoo again.
That's
I
right.
have, yeah.
That python stood no
Yeah,
chance.
yeah, yeah.
Did.
I feel sorry for that giraffe she's got locked up in the garage. I really do.
I did used to have a stuffed toy giraffe.
Do you know what? That doesn't surprise me, mate, whatsoever.
I'll have to find a picture.
I tried to go very meta and make like this huge like paper mache boulder which could like roll past her,
Yeah.
but I just couldn't finish
Yeah.
it in time.
Oh,
I was just trying to get an image of a chocolate orange rolling down the stairs towards me, you know. So,
Well, no, you know what you do before?
Yeah.
Just put a green screen behind you where you
Yes.
just see this.
Yeah.
You just see this big rock rolling toward you.
So, first of all, Gary, what are your thoughts on this film?
Admittedly, it's been a while since I've seen it, but it's one of these movies where you see it once or twice and it's pretty much indelled in your brain. I mean, it's a classic. I mean, I remember going to see it in the theater, and the people were still on the kind of nostalgia roll, just like Star Wars was obviously, constructed and was a homage to the old, Flash Gordon
Gordon's,
serials and Saturday Morning. And this one, done by George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, is the same kind of homage to all the adventure serials.
Yeah.
At a time when, people's kind of, that's the mood that people were in. They wanted to see a modern update on the stuff that, like their parents liked as a kid or that they'd only heard about. And the first one, which is still the best, before, as Hollywood does, beating a concept to death by doing it over and over and over and over and over. But there was nothing really quite like this before. And no wonder it became like the big monster hit that summer.
It's phenomenal, wouldn't it? And Sarah, what do you think?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, unfortunately, I wasn't old enough to see it at the cinema when it first came out. I've seen it since at the cinema when it was remastered. But yeah, this was on, every Christmas, bank holiday.
Yeah.
On normal TV. So I grew up watching it. Recorded it so many times. Really weird because it was always edited for TV. I don't think this was as bad as Temple of Doom. I mean, the really edited Temple of Doom, but it had its moments. So there was a few times of like little scenes where I'd not seen the full scene. I think one was at the beginning, with the booby traps. There was an edited version of that, so I didn't see the full sequence for quite some time. But yeah, from start to finish, it's just this brilliant adventure, and yeah, I was completely in love with Indiana Jones. Yeah, I wanted to go on adventures. Me and my brother used to, play Indiana Jones. He had a hat, and he had a brown leather satchel that he'd wear, and the brown shirt, and I'd be his plucky helper.
Yeah.
A good helper. I was definitely more Marion than Willie. We'd have the toy monkey, the toy snake, and yeah, it was just part of my childhood, and then growing up.
Yeah.
Obviously, brought my own kids onto it. It is just a brilliant family adventure. You
great.
know, there's no politics in it. It is just,
Yeah.
you know, so much fun and just pure escapism. I understand how, you know, it captured, you know, everybody's imagination. And was it in like the cinema for like a year or something?
Yeah,
Which is insane.
it's mad, and I'm the same as yourselves. I mean, this is my childhood, and this is a film that is just pure joy for me. And you know, in the UK in particular, I don't know what it was like over in the US, Gary, but where at the time when I was growing up as a kid in the early 80s, you didn't have Sky and satellite TV or cable at that point. You had 4 channels, and every Christmas you look forward to it because ITV and BBC, they always had the big bumper Christmas shows coming on and the movies. And one of these early ones was Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you always look forward to Christmas because they just put great stuff on. And I remember watching this with the family, and I was just blown away by it. You know,
is that when you first saw it, like on TV?
Yeah, I didn't see it in the cinema. I saw it. At home with the family over Christmas, and it just brings back happy memories with the family for me. And again, I never get bored of it. I have lost count how many times I've watched it over the years. It's that good.
I mean, it was a monster. I mean, it was the summer of '81. So I think that was probably like the biggest hit that summer. And there were a lot of other I mean, back in the I always think kind of fondly on growing up, you know, going to movies all the time, and especially like, you know, like during the 80s, where it always seemed there was at least 1, maybe 2 or 3 movies like every weekend, new ones that I wanted to see.
Yeah.
And now it's like lucky if there's like 2 a year
Exactly.
that I want to see. But with that one, I mean, in the summer of '81, there was that. There was also, and I'm going off the top of my head, I haven't cheated with Google or anything. I remember the Escape from New York was also out that summer. That was big. You had
Superman 2. Was that the same year?
Yeah. That was
that
80...
81? No, that was 81. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 81.
Superman 2. And then you had you know, I mean, there was a lot of really, really, really kind of classic comedies that were out that summer. To Dragon Slayer, if you remember that one, that was out that summer. So there was still, and that was when the kind of fantasy move of the early '80s started going that summer. So there was a lot of I mean, the '70s were over, now the '80s were kind of establishing their own tone, and it was interesting that the decade kind of started out with this kind of retro movie like Raiders, you know, to be the big hit.
I mean, I also as a kid, I mean, I'm not a fan of spiders. I've never been a fan of spiders, but in the early scenes, as
even like at the beginning of like Casablanca, you know, begins when, you know, you see the map. And then the little crawl about, in Casablanca, you know, everybody ends up here, which sets it up, you know, and that's all you need.
And you know, and again, you've got a fantastic cast in this. And I mean, you've got Denholm Elliott as well in this one as well, haven't you? Just playing it brilliantly. And he's Harrison Ford. I mean, when you talk about there was the link of Tom Selleck at one point to play this role, it would have been as much as I love Tom Selleck, it would have been a completely different style, wouldn't it? You know, without Harrison Ford in that lead role.
I can't imagine it.
It'd be more comedy.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, and here's the thing. I mean, we can say that, and I'm with you. And I love Tom Selleck. But I think we can say that because it's impossible for us to get the image of Harrison Ford out of our heads. But if it had happened that he was Tom Selleck did get the role, we'd be talking here about, oh, did you hear that the guy that played Han Solo almost got the part? We'd be going, oh, no, I can't see that.
True.
Yeah.
It would be the same thing. But no, Tom Selleck, and I'm not taking it away from Tom Selleck, who I think is an amazing actor. For this character, he almost seems too, for lack of a better term, I mean, he's too conventionally handsome.
Yeah.
He's almost too kind of Hollywood pretty for
the
part.
Yeah.
And Harrison Ford is not that. Harrison Ford's a good looking guy, but he's not like the kind of, the Hollywood pretty that
the
Tom
rugged
Selleck
sort of
back
thing.
in 1981 was.
Yeah. And one thing I love as well, and again, we've had the start of Raiders where we talked about the tomb, and it's great, but I do love how they set up the quest for the Grail, where they're talking in the school, assembly area, with the CIA officials, and it still amazes me today that one of those that's talking to him was Porkins in Star Wars. I'm like, what? Porkins is in this film as well. Unbelievable. But they're talking about it, and then he gets the big Bible out, and they talk about, the Ark of the Covenant and light coming out of it, and they talk about the biblical references. And it is just, it sets you up, your imagination's already racing before you've even got into the next phase of it. I mean, what about yourselves? I mean, I still get excited when I get to that bit, and I'm like, oh, I'm on for a film tonight. I've got my popcorn ready. I'm off.
Well, I think it's the performances sell it, because it is a pretty fantastical idea.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it is really ludicrous in a way. Like, well, we're at war, because this is set in 36, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, the war's already started, and yet, there's a set group after they split. I don't know. There's just something that really say it really grounds it, even though it is a supernatural
You're right.
thing, and the music as well, really, because as soon as
we're gonna have to talk about the music later on.
The Ark's theme, really.
Yeah.
Well,
what I love,
this is serious stuff that's gonna happen.
One thing about the setup is that I like the fact that it's clear that in many ways it's kind of like James Bond. It's like we're coming in on just another adventure for Indy, but it's not his first adventure.
Yeah.
Clearly this is something that he does on the weekends or whatever. Friday he goes to class, Saturday and Sunday he's running around Peru or whatever, then he's back on Monday morning to teach class. But and clearly he's known to the government, and he has all these contacts like Sala and all these people. And but I like the fact that when we come in and it's kind of another adventure, they don't kind of handhold the audience. They expect the audience to kind of keep up the fact that, oh, here's Indy and here's what he does. He already does this and this and this, without it just being all laid out.
Yeah. And I do like about the fact that this bit where they've talked about the Ark of the Covenant and the Nazis, I do like the fact that they cleverly they've used that element of it, because it is well established that Hitler was an occultist, and he did send armies across the world looking for artifacts, because he was into all that stuff. So I do like that element is in it, but
it sells it. It's because there is that little grain of truth in it, and it's a terrifying idea that if Hitler gets this power,
you walk across
that's it. It's the.
I mean, and that was really well established in comics, not so much like the comics of the 40s, but 40s comics that were set in the 40s that came out like in the 70s and 80s, like DC had the Justice Society, which was the super group in World War II.
Yeah.
And then Marvel had the Invaders, which were their World War II people. And all those comics established the fact that Hitler was after that spear of destiny.
Yeah.
Every comic company used that as the thing that what you just said, that Hitler had this obsession with mysticism, that he wanted to use those items to either give him power or help him get more power.
Yeah. And I also want to say about where he's shown in the Bible, and you've got the illustrations in the Bible of light coming out of the ark, and there's all these bodies on the floor. I want a Bible like that.
There is no Bible like that. I'm telling you now.
Yeah.
I'm telling you now. Yeah, the Children's Illustrated Bible.
Yeah,
it's like, Mommy, where's the picture of the ark? Yeah.
4 of you to carry it. So, I mean,
I just want to quickly mention that how respectful it is, because this is one of my mum's favorite film. My mum loves Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Anyway, but she's a very strict practicing Christian, and I know, you know, there's obviously some people that might find that offensive, but she said like the way it was done, so like that was what would happen. You know, she really, you know, believed in that power, and should it, you know, it was really well done. You don't mess with stuff, and you don't.
I agree with you.
You don't defy God. You know, it's
absolutely. You know, it's a very powerful thing, and I think you're right, because I mean, let's just ask this question. I mean, if this was made now, I think they would have altered it completely.
They would never make a movie. They would never make a mainstream movie now which validates the existence of God, or which legitimizes the existence of heaven.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would get, you'd have all the execs going, you need to take out this, you need to take this out.
Or they'd subvert it, because that's the other favorite thing they like to do at the moment.
Yeah. So I think again, it goes back to me being so lucky and grateful that I grew up in this era where I just had an era where all the Hollywood and all the TV producers and movie producers and directors and writers, all they were focused on was entertaining. You know, and it was a joyous time. So the fact that in my lifetime I got to enjoy these, and I get to watch it again and again and again, you know, I'm in bliss. It is.
If they made this now, they would have to call it Rainbows of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Very good.
It would.
I think I might have mentioned this before in another stream. I can't remember.
Please, nobody do that. Please.
No, you've just given them an idea now.
Don't do that movie.
You can see it right at the end. Everyone's got blue hair.
I love, again, growing up with these, because this was my childhood. I idolized Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. But I'm more a Spielberg girl than a Lucas girl, I think, because I was at the right age for like Jurassic Park and but when I was a teenager, I had an English project, and I had to write an autobiography, and you had to put like what were your hopes and dreams for the future, and I actually wrote that I was going to marry Steven Spielberg.
You know what?
I loved it. Yeah,
there's still time.
Sorry, Chris.
Chris, you're just gonna
tell Chris,
have to come
you know,
to terms
if Spielberg is ever in town filming a movie on location,
yes,
I don't know.
And you know what? In many ways, I wish you had, Sarah, because potentially at this moment in time, you potentially could have been running Lucasfilm and not Kathleen Kennedy.
There you
go. So,
and can you imagine, John, that if Sarah had married Spielberg, that, you know, we'd be getting all these like free tickets to the movie premieres and everything? It'd be great.
I don't know. I think the power would have gone to her head. To be honest with you. I think she would be like just tossing out a few pennies to us as she walked past and going, "You're beneath me now. I've made it." Yeah, I've got power.
If I'd had influence that them two final Indiana
Chop.
Jones films wouldn't have got made.
Let's talk about. I get fed up when current Hollywood talk about we need strong female characters. Let's talk about Marion, because Marion shows up and she is a complete badass from the very beginning. I mean, that bit when she literally punches and you know it's hurt him because he turns his face. And then she's like, something like, for years I've learnt to punch you, or I've you know, imagined punching you, you know, and she's just absolute joy to watch, you know, isn't she? She's so good in this role. Just what are your thoughts on her?
Who wants to go first?
Yeah,
you go.
Okay. Oh yeah. Oh, she's brilliant. I mean, you know, she predates Sarah Connor. She doesn't quite predate Ripley, but yep, because she's a real person. She's not this one-dimensional, you know, pretending just to be a man. You know, being strong doesn't mean you have to act like a man or like the stereotypical man. You know, she punches him because, you know, she's hurt. You know, she loved him. Yeah, and she's not, you know, bulked up. She's just this little, you know, slim thing. Looks very unassuming. She's very independent, very stubborn, very you know, she's just like, I'm coming with you. I'm your partner. There's nothing you can do about it. She's loyal.
Yeah.
You know, quick think, uses her initiative, uses her womanly wiles for Belloc. I love that.
Yeah.
Drinking scene. Just brilliant. And I think that was kind of improvising. I think she had a lot to do with that, actually, Karen.
And you know what, Sarah?
She's just so likable as well.
Absolutely. And do you know what, when you say about drinking scene, I love the fight scene in the bar and the bullet hole has gone through the barrel and it's dripping and she's going along the floor and she just takes a drink.
She just drinks it.
Yeah.
I love
it's
that.
It's just how instantly to set up a character and instantly you just fall in love with how great this character is, that, you know. And although I don't like Crystal Skull, you can see why they brought her back, because there wasn't that love interest that was as good as her.
Well,
the rest of it, arguably.
I think Sarah nailed it in that she has, there are particular scenes like the drinking scene that you just mentioned, where you would think you can see, you know, if you just describe that, somebody's crawling across the floor, there's the bullet hole, it's leaking out, and you can see, oh, that was a man, that would be a man character that would do that. So she has scenes in this one where if you just think about what's going on, you would typically expect to see a man doing that. But the fact that it's her doesn't take away anything from her strength as a female character, her femininity, whatever. I'm glad that they didn't. I think that if they would have portrayed her as more of a needy kind of, you know, airhead damsel in distress, I always think that takes away from the strength of the partner, because like, why would he be interested in somebody like that? I think that was shown clearly in the next one, where you did have that type of character, which just didn't work at all, not only because she couldn't compare to the Marion character at all, but because it's like, why would Indy want this kind of needy screamer, you know, all the time? And then with the third one, they didn't even bother with it. I mean, they wanted to focus on the Sean Connery thing, but they didn't even I mean, in there you have the attractive strong woman, but she's the villain. And so then so after this one, she kind of said, and then in Crystal Skull, they default back to Marion. So basically they knew there was no replacing her with a type that could just be played by a different actress. It's like, don't even bother trying to do a Marion type character unless you have Karen Allen doing it. And
it, you know, great point. And also what I love that moves on to this, where I talk about establishing her as a character. A few minutes later, you have the Nazis that come in, and you have the great villain, you know, the Nazi guy that's trying to get everything that she calls Air Mac, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, which is just a brilliant put down. I love how
Yeah.
she blows the cigarette smoke in his eyes, and
Mhm.
but then the shootout all kicks off, and I always, as a kid, I was always, you know, I was always Indy in that scene in the bar with my water pistol, you know, yeah, let her go, you know, sort of that sort of thing. So it was great, but when you talk about as a kid as well, and this is me talking about early 80s when I used to watch this stuff on TV. A few years later, you're right, they used to censor things, but this is a bit where you hear the gunshot and you think Indy's been shot, but then you look at the actual hitman and Marion shot him in the back, and they don't conceal the fact they have like the blood dripping out of his mouth. You know,
No, it's very.
it's all there, isn't it? You know, it's great. It's
But this is the thing about it. It doesn't, you know, talk down to the audience. Like, this is what you're gonna get. This is an adventure film, so you're gonna get everything.
Yeah,
you're going to see blood. You
yeah,
know, you're going to see spiders, snake. You're going to see dead people.
Yeah.
You know, this is a high stakes, and and I'm glad it doesn't shy away from that. But I love that it's a genuine thing. You know, it's an impulsive thing. She's done it. Yes, she can handle herself, but she's not all cool and swish with a gun. She's shaking. Like, oh my God, I've just killed him. But she did it out of necessity. And I love, and that gets forgotten about in modern film. Everyone's so bloody swish, aren't they, with weapons?
I know,
And
exactly.
it just isn't realistic at all.
Well, you know, again, you're right. I mean, because she can handle herself, but very clearly they show, look, a big bloke comes up behind her, grabs her, shoves her across the bar, and then they're restraining her. I mean, she knows she's not going to be able to resist that, and then she realizes she's in bother. So before the fight all kicks off, she's basically pleading with him, I can be reasonable, you know, I can tell you where it is. And then he says to her with with the poker at her eye, the burning poker gun, that time has passed, and he's about to do it. And then the whip comes in, and you're like, oh, okay, now I'm in my happy zone. Yeah, just phenomenal. And
that Nazi is like the most sinister bad guy up to that. He terrified me as a kid. The only two villains that ever terrified me, one was the child catcher. And this guy, and he doesn't have a name in the film, does he?
No, in Chitty Bang Bang, no.
No, in this, what's he called? I had to look it up on it.
I think he's just Nazi officer or something, isn't he? I need to look it up
apparently
again.
It's called Tote.
Okay.
But you have to really look at it. It's never mentioned.
Yeah, no, I don't recall whether that being mentioned in the film, but I do with him as well. I do love the bit where he goes to pick it up and it's burning, and he runs out and he's in this snow.
according to Wikipedia, his name is Arnold, as Sarah said, T-O-H-T. I'm kind of glad they didn't actually say that his first name was Arnold.
No, it would have ruined it.
In this movie.
But you're right, he is so sinister, and straight from the word go, you're like, great, you've got Indy, superb, you've got Marion, who's superb, but on the other side of it, he is absolutely,
which is great because it is so unexpected.
Yes.
And it's so brilliant and unexpected, and yet the most logical thing in the world. Why would a guy that has a gun on his side want to engage with this expert guy with this 4-foot scimitar? And it's great, and it's so unexpected, and I'm so glad you brought that up, John, because I wanted to ask, I've been waiting to ask the both of you, do scenes like that, and there are several like unexpected moments like that during the movie, is Raiders of the Lost Ark ever again as good as the very first time you see it? Just for scenes like that, but for several others too.
I don't think it's ever as good again as the first time you see it, because
No,
like
because
you say, it's pure joy.
it.
Yeah, and
It's like you're
when
going,
I watched that,
here's the scene, because the second time and third time you watch it, oh wait, shh, everybody, here's the scene with the swordsman. You know it, you know.
You always enjoy it, but but obviously it's lost that element of surprise.
Yeah, I remember me and my brother sat watching it at Christmas, and my dad sat there, and my dad had seen it. So my dad had a smile on his face because he knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And we didn't. And we saw that, and me and my brother just laughed our heads off because we just thought it was so cool. And we looked at our dad, and it's, again, with me, that links to a very special memory of me with my dad that, you know, I will never ever forget, because it's just, and that's what I mean about films like this. You share them with family members and they just stay forever, you know, and films today can't do that for me, but things like this are so good. And that scene in particular, I watched this film, as I said to you, I've lost count over the years, but I still love that scene. But I think what you're on about there, Gary, you're right in a way. I think it will never be as good as it is the first time.
I mean, they move at some point, and your story kind of illustrates this perfectly too. At some point, the kind of magic of these movies moves from the realm of the, you know, unexpectedly delightful, like that scene, or a lot of the ending, like the whole last ending sequence. I think if you don't know what's coming, it makes it better.
Yeah.
But then at some point, these movies like this one move over into the realm of comfort food.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
absolutely.
like you know what's coming. You can maybe recite the dialogue, you know, oh, here's the bar fight. Here's going to be this. Here's going to be this. But that's then the appeal of comfort food films, is that familiarity. But that's a distinct experience from watching it the first time.
Absolutely.
Continuing on with that, Gary, as well, is also just after that, when Indy and the audience think Marion's gone, dead.
Yeah.
And it, you know, the music is all there, and it feels genuine. It never feels like, you know, you're being cheated.
No.
But again, obviously, once you've seen it, you know that's not the case. But it's a lovely side.
Yes.
To Indy, seeing him drown his sorrows, and the fact that she did mean something to him, and he was, you know, he's been concealing it from her.
Yeah, exactly. And can I just talk about as well, you know, we talk about we're upset about the monkey dying. The monkey tips off the Nazis where Marion's hiding inside a basket. You know, the monkey does a Nazi salute.
Healthy monkey.
Should we feel sorry for the monkey?
No.
The monkey's a Nazi.
The monkey made his choices. The monkey decided which side he was on. He's got to live with it.
Yeah.
Okay,
you know, you side with the Nazis, you don't get the banana.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's such a brilliant scene, you know, the poison in the dates and how it's all done.
Yeah.
You know, he's that tension and the, you know, Salah just stopping his arm just in time.
And do you know what I love about, just before you get to that as well? I love it where they're sat with the old man and he's telling them about the measurements for locating the Ark of the Covenant. And as he's telling them, you get the wind that whips up, you know, goes through the apartment, almost to sort of say to the audience there, look, we told you this is going to be a paranormal element to it. This is another setup to say it's paranormal. There's something otherworldly about this, you know, brace yourself. It's coming. And I like that. And I always like Spielberg is very good at doing those little subtle things in films. And then, like you say, you get bad dates.
You know, I mean, before we get off the topic of the monkey, I actually thought it was a mistake. I actually thought they should have brought in, like, you know, a Nazi animal in each one of the Indiana Jones movies. Like maybe like in the second one, there's like a Nazi parrot or something. And then in the third one, there's like a Nazi, I don't know, like wombat or something like that. I don't know. Just have all these weird animals in each one. That,
Nazi buffalo or...
There you go. That's right.
And, you know, when you're saying about how down he is and he's drinking in the bar, I do love where he's talking to Belak. And I love it where they're having that conversation, and Belak says it's a brilliant conversation between the two. And Belak says, "Do you know what the Ark is? It's a radio transmitter to talk to God."
Yeah.
And then Indy says, "If you want to talk to God so bad, something like I'll help you." And he's about to shoot him, and then literally the whole bar gets up and points their weapons at Indy, and the kids save him. You know, Uncle Indy, Uncle Indy, come home. I
mean, but even Belak, which is, I like the character of Belak because I like the fact that they have different layers of evil and layers of antagonists in this one. Obviously, Arnold, can we call him Arnold? Arnold is the, you know, the vicious, you know, the embodiment of everything we think about the moral evil of the Nazis. And so he kind of embodies that. Belak is more of this kind of, you know, amoral character who's really only interested, who
the quest
who has the same you know, esteem for, you know, the history of these pieces and the you know, he's not after them for the accumulation of power. Like Indy, he can appreciate their cultural value, their historical value. You know, I think if a piece got ruined in front of him, he would probably react just like Indy does. So in that sense, he's kind of a
he's not evil,
like Indy in some ways, but clearly kind of like the dark side of Indy, but still possessing a lot of you know, and the intellectual bent that Indy has.
I think you're right, and I think where I say he's not evil, because you've nailed it there. All he cares about is the quest for the next artifact that he wants to locate. He's blinded by it to an extent, and I think you see that with, effectively, he's not happy when they throw Marion into the snake pit later on, is he? You know, he doesn't want that to happen because he likes Marion.
He's not
he's not evil, is he? And I think the end, what the difference between him and Indy, I think at the end, is Indy realizes and respects the paranormal element to it. That's what he learns. But Belak doesn't. He discards that element of it, and that's really his undoing at the end of the film. What are your thoughts on that, Sarah?
Yeah, I agree. I like him because, as you both said, he's not this one-dimensional villain. He's a brilliant antagonist for Indy. And, you know, it's already been established that there's this rivalry. You know, they're both very clever. They're both very able. But but you know, Indy's got scruples, whereas Belloc hasn't. But again, it's still an uneasy alliance with the Nazis.
And
I love that scene where Arnold comes in when Marion's trying to escape, and he's got the coat hanger. And they both shit themselves. So it's like, you know, it's not, Belloc isn't as cool as he makes out. But again, his response to Marion and being in the snake pit. These Belloc and Indy aren't quite so different. And again, there's that lovely scene when Indy's threatening to blow up the Ark, and he's like, you're not going to do, because you wouldn't, you know,
Yeah.
you couldn't bear to see that
Right. And he could
being
be taught, he
destroyed.
knows he won't do it because he
Mhm.
knows that he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he knows that Indy wouldn't do it.
And you go back to the bar scene, you know, Belloc
Mhm.
says to Indy, he says, "You're just a shadow reflection of me, and
Mhm.
it would just take one gentle push to push you into the light." So he's almost
Mhm.
saying to him, "It just takes one nudge, and you'll
Yeah.
be exactly like I am." So they are
Mhm.
very similar.
That's why it's unfortunate that they killed off Belloc, because he could have easily come back, not in
Yeah.
every movie, obviously, but he could have come back in a subsequent movie where he fit, because he would have been a good
Mhm.
kind of ongoing antagonist.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, you know, we then move on to Indy and Sulla going to effectively try and locate the Ark.
Mhm.
And again, you've got this. This is an iconic scene as well, isn't it?
Mhm.
Where he puts the staff in the room with
Yeah.
the buildings, and the sun
Mhm.
hits it at the right time. You know, I think one example alone is Family Guy of parodied this
Yeah.
before, you know, which is brilliant, you know, and Simpsons I think have done it as well, and there's so many others. It's just such an iconic scene, you know. It is just, you know, fantastic. I mean, this whole setting in the desert,
Mhm.
this is where it really ramps up for me. It's just pure fun at this point, you know. And what are your thoughts as we get to this stage and the Nazis find Salah, you know, and you know they take him away, and Indy's like, you know, suddenly, what is it? The rope, he's trying to get some help to get back up, and suddenly
Mhm.
these Nazi flags come down for him to climb up with,
Yeah,
because Salah's
that
just
was
put
a
them
good.
all together. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
good, isn't it?
it all comes together, because this is where the film could have started to sag, because we're into the middle
Yeah.
part. But again, because you've got this lovely interplay of Salah and Indy, and I love the part where they almost get discovered as well, and they have to go and bring water to the
Yeah.
soldiers. Yeah, you got this nice little interplay going off there. You've got the stuff with Marion, and again, I love the fact that Marion. Okay, yes, she is a prisoner, but she does.
Yeah.
She could have just sat there and been the damsel, but she's not. And
Mhm.
again, it comes back to Belloc being, we're not savages.
Yeah.
Let's not keep her this way. And yeah, he has got a bitter heart.
Yeah.
It's all good. But that scene you mentioned, John, again, the way it's shot, because
Yeah.
it's a bloke holding a stick.
Yeah.
If you want to, really cynical, but it's so it's elevated by that music,
Yeah.
the lighting, the direction, and again, it just shows how Spielberg is the master of his craft.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without a
Well,
doubt.
John, you said a minute ago, you said, we're going to move on to this scene. First of all, I'm not really sure we can move on from the loss of the Nazi monkey, but I'll give it a try.
He's still breathing.
Yeah.
The one thing
I'll order
about
you one, mate. I'll order you one.
boy, if that wasn't like a merchandising bonanza that they somehow missed, how they could not market the little Nazi monkey where if you push the button, the hand does. Maybe they thought, well, shoot,
Yeah.
I don't know. We're into iffy territory here.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
If it has like movable parts. But the one thing two things about this sequence that I remember most. What for me may be just the most evocative shot in the movie, and Sarah, you talked about how Spielberg is a master at this, was that kind of like sunset scene where it's like shot in long shot in just silhouette with the kind of red sun there with with Indy on the dunes watching them digging, but it's all like done in silhouette or whatever. I thought that was just an amazing shot.
Superb.
And I always like scenes, even this obviously this is more of a quest movie, or where you go where something you find in A leads you to B, and then something there leads you to C, and on and on. I like those kind of movies. But in this one, where like things like that, which were like puzzles which were constructed by people ages ago, you know, rely on the sun being in a particular position with the rays. And
yeah,
I mean, I love movies like that, even in something like National Treasure, where it's like, oh, the founding fathers, you know, were setting up these things where you've got to kind of hold this special glass over it to see the map and all this kind of stuff. I love stuff like
it's
that.
great,
And
isn't it?
that's with the rod.
I love how Arnold has got the wrong measurements because he only got half, and Solo, and he goes, they're digging in the wrong place, and you have that little. It's just brilliant.
And I also love where Indy goes into the tent and he finds Marion, and he has that a moment where he pulls his, you know, his mask down, and he's basically says it's her, you know, and he pulls her mouth's covered over, and he basically takes the gag off. But then he makes a decision. This is what I love about Indy. He puts it back on. And he goes, "I'll be back for you," essentially, because if I take you now, they're going to comb the whole area for us. So he's making a hard choice there. That, you know, people would say he's a bit of an arse for doing it, but it's the logical thing to do.
Yeah.
And then come back later. But you then get, like you say, Balosh looks up and he's like, he suddenly notices people are digging in a different area later on as well. And that's it. And one of the best bits for Salah for me is when they open up the tomb. And again, when I talk about, they keep hinting about this is paranormal, you know, when they open the top of that tomb and the steam comes out, that, you know, the air the gas comes out, but then you have a storm cloud, you know, and I love all of that. And like you say, Spielberg is a master at all of this stuff. And it just, there's just not a bit in this film that makes me think I'm bored here. I want more of it every single time I watch it.
And there's not, and again, there's nothing that shouldn't be there. It's very tight. Every scene has got a purpose.
Yeah. And that bit with Salah where he looks down, what is it? They say, why is the floor moving? And he drops there, and
it's
then
a brilliant shot.
And then Salah is like, asps, very deadly. You go first, Indy.
Yeah, it's just...
Yeah, I mean, these scenes like the first one you mentioned, again, a trope that I love in movies kind of like this is the idea that, you know, why you know, people who are always so arrogant to be meddling with forces they don't understand. First of all, because they don't accept those forces exist.
Yes.
Basically is their downfall. But also in a way, I think, you know, I mean, Indy himself doesn't even have a full understanding of the forces that he's dealing with. I think that he accepts it from a not from a faith point of view, but more because kind of he has more, he's shown as having like a more open mind. He's more open to it, but being open to it doesn't really mean that you believe in it as like a real thing with power that you've got to respect, and you've got to respect your place against that power. It's more of, it always seems to me that he is more of like, you know, sure, I've seen things, I'll believe anything, which puts that on the level of a lot of other things that he's seen, which it never will be, because it's obviously much higher. I think that the whole final sequence in The Last Crusade is much more is much more of a presentation that like Indy, you know, may be coming closer to being an actual like believer, because he talks about, you know, where he takes that step of faith onto the original, because to do that, you actually have to have faith, not just a belief that faith is a thing for some people, because that wouldn't make you step out onto a chasm against with an invisible
exactly,
you know. And so, but I think this movie is a part of that journey of Indy's. But at this
I
point,
think Indy wouldn't have got to that point had it not been for this film. It's the
yeah,
journey he goes on.
yeah.
And
At
I
this
think
point, he's still part of the group where it's like, Indy, you're meddling with stuff that, you know, he's trying to keep it from the Nazis, which is basically what his quest should be. You know, so he doesn't need to believe in it to keep the Ark out of the hands of people who should never have it.
Well, it's an interesting point. I mean, let's talk about the fact that, you know, from release dates, Raiders of the Lost Ark is the first one, but from a timeline perspective, Temple of Doom is meant to be set before it. So I think where potentially you've got Belloc is how he is. If you're talking about timelines and Temple of Doom is before, he's experienced that in Temple of Doom, so he doesn't quite believe, but he's further along that trail than Belloc is. And maybe potentially that's, you know, this is just me and my headcanon element, because there's no way they would have been thinking about this when they first released it. But essentially he is then further along than Belloc. And essentially that is what saves him in the end, because he realizes at the end, when we get to it, what he needs to do for them to survive. So, you know, that's great. But I mean, jumping back to what you said a while ago, Sarah, as well, about Marion and Belloc in the tent, and he wants her to try the dress on. I love it where she's eating some bread and drinking some water, and she's like, you know, with food in her mouth, going, "Yeah, I bet you would." You know, it's almost like, yeah, well, you know.
But she does it, and I love the fact that she takes the knife, and she's got the dress on to cover up the. I just love how. Why has Belloc got that dress in Middle of Egypt? Do you know what I mean? There's questions need to be asked.
Wow. Well, yeah. I mean, you see him walking around the desert in a dress.
That's what he's on a quest for. He's on a quest to find a woman who can fit into that dress.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I'm sure I read that you get the sense there is a genuine attraction between the two of them, because Belloc is charming, is, you know, intelligent, and again, in many respects, he is like Indy, and Marion's beautiful. Very likable, you know, she's not stupid. So I think there is that tension there. And I think in the original script, that was more alluded to. Well, I'm glad it isn't, because, you know, Indy is a true love, but I don't think Marion would care about seducing somebody to escape. But I love that. We know, she's a good drinker, but I also like to think Belloc, they're both tricking each other. I don't think Belloc's as daft at his mate, because there's a throwaway line about his family on a vineyard. That's where the wine comes from into. So I like to think there's a bit more going on there, where they're both like trying to checkmate. But yeah, it's a brilliant scene. Again, I think I can't see anybody else but Karen doing it, because she does it so naturally. I think other actresses might have, you know, the thing. I don't know if I dare do it on the.
Where's your frying pan?
Should I do it?
Yeah, do it.
Go for it.
There you go.
There you go. Our own Marion Ravenswood, everybody.
If I took gobbledygook now, it's your fault.
What she's going to do now, she's going to pull the knife down. Me and Gary are just going to
She's
laugh.
Well, she needs about 9 more straight
yeah,
in a
I'd have
row.
them laid out on the desk.
yeah. She's got. You don't
But,
know.
talking
there's a
about
whole
really
load along the
really
floor.
quickly, talking about the dates of the movie, I never understood why. At the time, I never understood why would you make this, set Temple of Doom a year earlier, unless you just, it's just you patting yourself on the back for being your own cleverness. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. They almost had to do that because of where the end of this movie leaves Indy and Marion. They couldn't do like a James Bond thing where at the beginning of the next movie, she's gone and now he's just transferred his attentions onto somebody else.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have worked. So they almost needed to have that move. I think that's the only reason to me that makes sense of why they would go to the trouble of doing
I think you're right, and
you make a good point, John, about the faith aspect, because why would Indy not be a believer when he's seen what happened with the Shankara stones and Shiva? And so that kind of they did kind of put themselves into a corner in that respect. But I agree, you couldn't have his relationship with Willie after marrying. It wouldn't have sat right. You're absolutely right, Gary.
No, I mean, be honest with you, having a relationship with Willie would have put you off anybody anyway.
I mean, I think though that
the elephant
with the stuff in the second one, I think that I could see Indy justifying that and putting it more into the idea of like, unexplainable. I'm not trying to come down on the side of one faith over another, but I could see Indy saying, well, there's mysticism, there's a lot of mysticism in the world, but clearly what happens in this movie and in the third one is more than that. And so I think that he could probably justify, there's a lot of weird things that kind of go on, but the end of this one and then the end of the third one kind of like bookend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to it, I think he's not there until the end of Raiders where he's believing in it, but at the end of Raiders he is believing in it. And I think you're right, Gary. I think in the Last Crusade, that final bit, he's believing in it. He has to believe in it because it's the only way to save his dad, isn't it? So there's almost this forced faith on him at that point, where it's like, well, I don't have a choice now. I have to believe. I have to take that leap of faith. Whereas here he's kind of like, well, similar to the same extent. It's not a leap of faith as such. It's basically he's figured out, and I don't know where it. Maybe there's a novelization somewhere where he'd read something where it says like, on the back of where it's got measurements, it also says about, you need to close your eyes when you open the ark or something like that. That's the reason why you do it. And he's remembered that, because I don't think that's necessarily a leap of faith. I think that is him remembering something that's going to save their lives at that point. But I do think he's further along than Belloc, and I think Belloc, if he had survived it, I think he would have been similar to Indy in that he's now.
To be the change man. Well, this is the thing: it's that reverence. Belloc, and the soldiers don't have that reverence.
No,
for that, whereas Indy does, and same with and that that comes into play in the Last Crusade with the only the penitent man shall pass. So there's some things that mortal men shouldn't.
I mean, you could even ask, well, at the end, I know we don't want to delve too much into the third one, but with the guardian of that little area, what do they call that area that's on the little cave with the chalices?
Cups.
Would that guardian have shown himself?
Yeah.
Well, would he have shown himself to
a latte?
Well, yeah, yeah,
Can
there
I,
you go.
can I
There
have
we
a
go.
cinnamon?
That's
Can I
what
have a
that's
cinnamon
what they
latte?
needed. They needed one of those little latte machines, you know, behind them all. But it would have been made out of wood or something.
Just Indy with a
No, but I
foamy
mean, would
moustache.
he would he have shown himself to Indy if Indy sincerely hadn't got to that point?
No, I
Yeah.
You know,
agree.
to
No,
make that journey. So that's how I interpret the end of
I
the
mean,
third one.
you're absolutely right on that. And you know, when we review
No,
it,
that's
we'll
just
go
my
more into
interpretation.
it.
I'm not saying that's the only
No, you're right.
interpretation. I'm
And
just
No, I
saying
think it's
when,
a good
it's
observation.
very
That guy.
good. And when we get to that movie, we'll go more into it. But I think you're right, Gary, because to get across that bridge, that invisible bridge, you have to take that leap of faith. So if you've taken that leap of faith, you believe. So you've made it across to the other side. Without that, you don't. You fall to your death, don't you? So it's literally that leap of faith. So you're right. Anyone that gets into that chamber, the Guardian effectively knows that they have to believe it.
right.
The only thing that trips the Guardian up is where Indy throws the gravel across the invisible bridge, so the people that don't believe manage to get across, like Donovan.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where it trips them up, isn't it? But I mean, going back to this, we need to talk about the pit of snakes. And
there you go.
Cue the snake.
And we need to talk
That's
about
actually a pretty darn good snake there. I mean,
It's
that
a good
really is.
snake.
Yeah.
That really is. That's a good solid snake.
And we need to talk about that iconic scene with Indy staring face to face with the cobra.
Emoji there, John.
Like that. Yeah. And it's just brilliant. And, you know, again, now people talk about that and they go, oh, okay. You could see they use glass for that scene.
Yeah, it's plexiglass.
But, you know, but back in the 80s, when I was watching it on a small TV, I couldn't see that.
No,
I never noticed. I think they tweaked it, didn't they, when they remastered it?
Yeah.
It
was like some small reflection or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Never. Well, I imagine most people were in the moment and didn't notice it. It's only like the critics that, you know.
And when you talk about these characters as well, it just shows how great they are, where they're surrounded by pythons and they're trying to, if he looks up at him, goes,
It's just a brilliant.
I'm gonna punch you one when you get back
the
down.
Chemistry between them two, it just can't be.
No.
Yeah, compared. It just works so well. I don't think he, like we said at the start, he never had that again with the other actresses. There was something really special.
Yeah.
With them too.
And it's also, again, you know, and see what your thoughts are on it, guys, when, you know, he goes up there and she's going, what about this, your idea? And he's like, I'm working on it, you know, work faster, you know, and he goes through the wall. And again, as a kid, I was terrified where she's surrounded by all those corpses and you've got that one corpse where the snake is coming out of the corpse's mouth.
Oh yeah.
That was an iconic thing.
That used to give me nightmare. It wasn't that thing. But again, this is what we did as kids. You knew it were going to terrify you, but it was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a brilliant little shot that I always remember where she loses a shoe.
Yeah.
And it's a people's shoe, and the snake goes through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a brilliant little shot. But
I think that the thing with the snake coming out of the mouth, which is so like there's such revulsion to it, is because that's kind of, just for a moment, they bring in the whole element of body horror, which which is the snake coming out of the mouth. And it's like, it's not what this movie's been so far, and it's just there for a minute, but it just causes you to.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we move on to another favorite element of mine with the plane, and it is just pleasure. I mean, Gary, what are your thoughts about this bit with the plane, you know, with Indy at the plane, you know, and he gets up on the plane and, you know, it's, you know, I'm going to let you go.
Well,
through this
no, again, it's the same not the same, but it's in the same area as the swordsman. It's like Indy is clearly, that was the great thing about the snake scene, because it makes Indy not the master of every situation. If there wouldn't have been a single thing that freaked him out or a single thing he couldn't do, that type of character is boring. Interesting to watch, but ultimately boring, because there's no stakes there. There's no threat there. And the whole snakes thing humanized him. It's like, oh, he's not infallible. There are things that freak him out. He's probably seen everything under the sun, but there's still things that freaks him out. I think that whoever came up with that idea was genius, because I think that the character would have been nowhere near as relatable, appealing without that. And the same thing with the airplane, which is, okay, Indy's knows his limitations, which the snake scene showed. And just like with the swordsman, why take on somebody that you know is your better in terms of this physical strength, when you can maybe maneuver the situation to take advantage of what's around you. And so I think that shows that he's clever, but he's operating purely from a knowledge of his own limitations, which is really clever writing.
Absolutely.
Lawrence Kasdan, good job.
And do you know what? You talk about that fight scene, because I absolutely adore it. Right. There's a few things in that fight scene. When you talk about how badass Marion is, she uses the gun on the plane to take out an entire truck of Nazis, which is brilliant in itself. I love that, which sets off the gasoline, so that sets that up. But what I love is when he's fighting the bigger bloke, who's clearly a better fighter than him. I love how he plays dirty. He bites his arm.
You have to.
And then when he gets thrown, and he looks at him, and I love this about Indy, he actually runs away. He goes underneath. You would
again
because he's
buying time, isn't he?
You can believe that he's a real person. He's not invincible. And you're going to use whatever you can, whether that's your environment or, like you said, the biting.
You either go for the eyes or like the biting.
And all credit to Harrison Ford, though, because when the big guy gives him that first jab to the face, and Harrison Ford does that brilliant.
See, that's why this movie is not like, is so distinct, from like the pew pew Star Wars movies. Because it's what would really, how would you react if a guy basically, it's basically kind of like getting a brick thrown in your face. I mean, it would probably feel the exact same thing. Your legs would buckle.
Absolutely.
And what's also great, the last thing I just thought of is that it's really, really clever, Spielberg and Lawrence Kasdan, how they even use like the generic fight scenes, the generic action scenes, illustrate character. Illustrate, what would Indy do when he's outmatched like this? Which tells you about Indy. So it's not just a generic fight around a plane. It reveals character, and that again is really good writing.
And again, going back to Marion as well, I love that she gets involved, because what really annoyed me in Temple of Doom is, in the mine scene when he's fighting that guard, and she's just there in the background going, and like, no, get involved. Also, that is actually the same actor. And he said, I believe was he a boxer from Birmingham?
Yeah, he was, I think.
He's like a local celebrity, and he's quite
notorious
in his own right. But brilliant.
Great.
I love how he's got that on his CV, that he hit 2 bells at Harrison Ford. I mean,
and also when you talk about that scene as well, another bit I love about it as well is Marion. She knocks out the pilot, and she smugly sort of holds them up like that and goes, See,
Yeah.
I did it. Look, see
Which
what I
you,
did.
yeah.
And well, he's carrying on fighting the big
Yeah.
bloke, and then the big bloke, essentially, he doesn't beat him physically. I mean, he has that bit, Indy, where he literally throws everything at this guy and like makes his nose bleed, but it's actually kind of it's his to an extent his intelligence when he's knocked down, because he's like, you've got a moving plane. He gets lucky with it, but this big guy's clearly completely forgotten about it. He's in the moment with the boxing, isn't he? So you know, that again, as a kid, that was an iconic scene for me, because again, now you wouldn't have it. You wouldn't have all the blood spatter everywhere.
Yeah,
But they did
Oh.
that. And it's great. It just iconic stuff. And then
I mean, it when I'm trying to think. So this was 81. I don't know why this image just leaped into my head. 5 years earlier, Seeds of Doom, where people are in the little mulcher and you don't really see anything. You hear the sounds, but you don't see like
absolutely
huge amounts of blood spatter.
Well, I think this is another one that was slightly edited down for TV.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I think because when did you watch it, Sarah? Was that when would that have been? Was that on telly for the first time?
I would say probably about 90, 91.
Yeah.
Oh,
You see, because mine was early 80s when I watched it at Christmas, and back then they didn't edit anything in the 80s. I remember in the summer holidays watching Jaws, and you sat there as a kid, and they always showed the scene of the leg dropping to the bottom of the ocean.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
They just
it was terrible in the 90s. One of the worst offenders was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. They absolutely hacked that to pieces.
Really?
All the good stuff was edited out of that.
I guess they thought all of you kids were too sensitive.
Yeah. And I remember going to Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster and video rentals?
I do.
I'm renting the video so we could see the full cut, and then if you stayed, the end of the credits, they played the Bryan Adams video in full. It was happy day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be kind, rewind.
Yeah.
We'll have to cover that. I love that.
Yeah. Why would? I mean, don't they realize people probably already saw these movies in the theaters, or they walked down the street and rented them? Why would they? Who do they think they're helping by trimming it on the network? People already know what the movie was. Just show it.
Exactly. And I'm going to go one better for you, Sarah. I'm going to call it the Bryan Adams double, and we're going to do Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, right? But then after it, we're going to do the Three Musketeers with Charlie Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland and the others.
I have that. I love that movie.
Yeah, I do as well.
All right, I'm up for that.
And what was it? All for Love with Sting, Rod Stewart, and Bryan Adams.
What was the Bryan? Was that? It's been decades since I saw that Robin Hood. Was that the Everything I Do It For You song? Was that?
Yeah.
The Three Musketeers with Kiefer and Charlie. That's a great one.
It's great. Yeah, and Tim Curry is great in it.
Rebecca De Mornay is great. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be doing those doubles, everyone. So you brace for it. We're coming for you.
How Paul McGann? We can't forget Paul
McGann.
Absolutely.
As a sissy.
Yes.
They just trimmed that wig down for the TV movie.
They didn't.
So back to Raiders. We then get to the chase scene with the vehicles, which is great. And Indy says before it, Sulla goes, well, what are you going to do, Indy? And he goes, I don't know, I'm making this up as I go along, which is another fantastic quote. But this again is why I love my 80s and 90s movies. Oh, what? Yeah, okay.
The U-boat, the boat.
Oh, no, that's after.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm glad you're keeping
I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's that shot. Yeah, so we got the trying to take the Ark. So Indy goes after them on the horse, gets on the vehicle, takes on the truck. This is why I love 80s and 90s movies, because these are practical stunts. These days you wouldn't have that at all. And I think where the later Indies failed was because it's green screen and it's in a studio, that the whole scene of where the stuntman is Indy, he's underneath the truck and then he comes out the back of it being dragged. I mean, nothing comes close to that practical stuff. It just adds to the whole experience, doesn't it? What do you think, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I don't know, CG has made it companies so lazy, but also like risk adverse.
Yeah.
And same with the actors as well. Back in the day, the actors would just get on and do it, and you might get hurt. I mean, how many injuries did Harrison Ford get doing filming this?
I know.
Um,
and I think what I love about this as well is you have the whole scene where he gets thrown over the top and then he's getting dragged by the truck, and then he comes back around and he comes back in and gets the guy, and he literally slams his head.
Lucky that Luke and Han were able to knock out the two stormtroopers on the Death Star that actually just happened to be exactly the right size, that their armor would fit them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's again, and this is kind of, I think, kind of like a cheeky nod to that. But again, it's like, because if he would have found the first time and it would have fit perfectly, the audience would just do an eye roll and it's like, oh, whatever. But again, they find a good way to kind of milk the humor for that, but makes the scene more real.
Yeah. And again, another thing I like about it, and you touched upon this earlier, Gary, about the fact that essentially the Nazis don't believe in this. They see it as like a machine, effectively, the Ark. They don't see it as a paranormal thing. And there's the comment that the what is it, the general there, or the colonel, he basically says to Belak, he says, I don't feel comfortable having this due device and ritual, something along those lines, in this facility. So you even start getting to a point where even they're starting to get a little bit on edge about it. And I think what is really iconic as well is just you have the box with the Nazi symbol and it just gets burnt through. So it's the Ark has just burnt away the Nazi symbol, and it is,
which I think is
very,
great.
very
That's
well.
great.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And
but I mean,
then,
if you think about it, where I mean, again, at this point in the movie, you're just kind of going with it. It's kind of jump to jump to jump to jump to jump, and we just kind of go with wherever Spielberg's taking us. But if you think about it, the only reason, as far as like, I'm not talking about Tot, but some of the other soldiers, the only reason they're doing this is they may not even know why. And if they know why, it's really only to the extent of, well, because Hitler, their leader, is obsessed with it and he wants it for some reason. That's probably the extent of what they know of why they're doing anything in this movie from the position of just one of the soldiers. So, I mean, if they do believe it at all, it's kind of irrelevant. The only reason they're doing it is because they know that their big boss, wants this, for some reason.
Exactly.
But I do like that little scene, because I like the idea that there's this dissent, that they're not, that people are unhappy about it, and of course it's in keeping with what they believed at the time. But so they're not just blindly following. No, it's like, hang on a minute, why have we got this? This goes against our creed, and it's a little bit more than just your average, just because there's been other films where the Nazis have been the villains, but it is just cardboard cutout. And so
Exactly.
it's nice that, there's that just that little bit more like, yeah, we all question this, what's going on, and we're not
Yeah.
happy about it.
I mean, yeah,
And
it would have been. I mean, that dialogue was kind of on point because that would have been repulsive to them,
Mm.
yeah,
like you
Yeah.
said, to have why I'm uncomfortable having this piece of Jewish iconography.
mhm,
Of course they would. Like I said, that's
Yeah.
like, that would have been the
Mm.
most, distasteful, despicable thing in the world
mhm.
to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely
Yeah,
right.
and
And
that and it's followed through, isn't it? Because the general, he thinks it's a complete waste of time, and it's
Mhm.
only Belloc saying,
yeah,
"We need to see what do you want to just take it to your boss?" And
exactly.
yeah,
And you're right, Sarah. And I think you get throughout this film, you get the fact that this colonel or the general, whatever he is in
mm,
this film, I forget, but he's a little bit annoyed with Belloc.
mm,
He doesn't like particularly Belloc, and he thinks this is a waste of time. But
yeah,
you have the references again that effectively Belloc is being employed by Hitler or
mhm,
Mhm.
his upper staff to go on this quest. So um, yeah, it's just all the way through. It's nicely fleshed out, these characters and this
mm,
story. Um, but I mean, you get there, Gary, and you talked earlier about the fact that he's got the rocket launcher on top of the mountain,
mm,
on top of the cliff, and he's basically saying, "Let her go, or I'll destroy the ark." That's another great shot. I really do
mm,
love that shot, and and it's just superb. But again, I'm surprised that they kept them alive at this point there, because when he gives up,
mm.
you know, you would think the Nazis would think, we don't actually need them anymore.
Yeah, but that's Belloc saying, "No, don't kill him," because Belloc
He
wants
wants the
he wants
ego.
the victory
Yeah,
of
Yeah,
being able to
the pride comes before a fall.
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
he
Good point.
wants not only to get victory
Mm,
over Indy, but he wants Indy there to see him win.
Yeah,
mhm,
yeah,
That's what you can I think you can
mm,
totally put it down to that.
yeah. Absolutely, and
But
that,
see, that's the benefit of keeping a character like Belloc around in
mhm,
subsequent movies because he knows right away that Indy's bluffing
mhm,
because, like you
yeah,
said, he and Indy are even though the dialogue was a little bit too on the nose about, well, we're kind of shadow selves,
mhm,
you can see
yeah,
that anyway. You don't need to be told
mm,
that with such on the nose dialogue.
yeah,
But clearly, that, having a character like that around gets rid of Indy's advantage in situations like
mhm,
that, to where
yeah,
somebody that didn't know that he was just bluffing may
yeah,
back down. But
mhm,
you have a character like Belloc there and go, no, he won't do it,
yeah, yeah.
and so yeah.
And I think again, you're right, with that. And I do love the fit with Belloc, where he
mm.
literally nicks a machine gun and he basically tells the Nazis, "Get back." He's calling the bluff on this one.
Oh, yeah, 'cause he says,
Um,
"Come on then, we'll do it together." Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And
I
then
love I look again, this is what I love about I love these mind games.
yeah, and I do love to, at this point, again, Indy, as we know throughout these films, is all about fortune and glory.
Mhm,
But he's making the point now where he's basically saying he wants Marion, not the Ark. And
mhm,
she even gives that little smile, doesn't she?
mhm.
Where he's telling her to let it go, and she's like, ah, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
there's a little funny
Mhm.
smile I
yeah,
love, which is really well done. And
yeah,
then from there, we then go to the final,
mm,
the big showdown where, again, you talk about iconic moments in
mm,
this film, but the two of them tied up.
mhm.
I mean, Gary, you go for, what's your, is this one of your standout
Well,
elements
yeah, I
in this
mean, it's
film?
really well staged. I mean, even when because first of all, when you first see it, it's like you never know what's going to happen. I mean, this
Mhm,
could still go a lot of different ways. Uh, you know, they could, they could end the movie without really showing anything. I mean, you're not really expecting, I think, the special effects kind of spectacular that's about to happen.
Yeah.
The idea that at last Indy's starting to believe, because there's nothing in there's no reason for him to tell her close your eyes and for him to do it unless he has become, even in some small way, a believer. At that point, it makes no practical sense for him to say close your eyes for any other reason. It just because he doesn't know what's going to happen, but he knows that there's some force that's about to be unleashed. And it's masterful the way that they, the spirits who come out, where it's like, oh, it's beautiful, and all, and then it switches on a dime.
Brilliant.
That is really, really well done.
Oh, it's superb. Again, this was another element that terrified me as a kid, because it's like you say, Gary, that bit where they turn into gory creatures and they're coming right at them, and what our Nazi friend screams, doesn't he? But the whole, I mean, they'll mock it now, but when I was watching it on a TV in the early 80s, and you just see, not only do you see the laser, the light, the fire beams going into the eyes of all the Nazis that are standing there and wiping them out, but when you see the faces are melting and then exploding, it's this is what I call family entertainment in the 80s.
There's a reason that scene's become a GIF, the melting face, to throw up on emails and stuff.
I think this was the first time I was legitimately scared by a film, and I couldn't. For years, I had to watch with my hand. I'd get to that bit and I'd be like this. It's like the behind the sofa. It was the face melt, and again the changing of the spirit. But I mean, so well done. But and I love how it lulls you into that full sense of security when they first open it and there's that beat. And then and it's just sand, and that general just starts laughing. Like, he's being validated, like this is a complete waste of time. And you're just kind of like, okay. And then it's just like, wow. Like, oh my God, what's going on for you? But
and then the slow way that inside on the sand, the lights and stuff kind of start to play around, because it doesn't, for the audience, it kind of builds your anticipation, like, wait, what's happening?
And that kind of like how it pulsates. It's the best way I can describe it. And the sound design. And it's absolutely terrifying. Even though I couldn't see it because I got my hands over, but just hearing it scared the hell out of me. Really, just a brilliant payoff.
I mean, I like how, and this is where Spielberg's good. He does the build up as well, where the generator goes. You hear the generator go first. That's the first thing, isn't it? Then you see all the lights explode, and then you get into it, and then right at the end, he's like, cover your eyes. So that's just Nazis are just dolls, and they're lifted up in the air. But no, they look at it. Still looks to me incredible to this day.
No,
I agree. There's something about practical effects.
Absolutely.
And I just think if that had been CG, that it would have lost something.
And I love, what I love about this final scene is when they open their eyes. If you look as well beforehand, before the cloud cover comes in, you've got sky, clear sky, and you've got stars everywhere, and then you then have the cloud covers all of it. The ark, the lid goes all the way up with the flames, comes all the way back down with the cloud cover, and then at the end, they've not witnessed any of this. They've just got clear sky.
Well, because you can't. No human can witness it.
No.
and it's like it's inconceivable. You couldn't, your
Mhm.
senses couldn't stand
Yeah.
it.
No.
See, I was going to ask you two the question as well, and both of you give me your answers and what you think on this. But did the Ark and the beings in the Ark, did they wipe out the entire base? Because obviously they get off the island and they escape. So I assumed that they were let loose and they just basically just killed everyone that was on that base. Do you think? Because it was a facility, wasn't it? So
Yeah, it's basically, you know, if you were basically standing against the forces of heaven,
yeah,
you know, and I guess you could put every Nazi soldier there in that category, then yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I agree. Oh, yeah, because otherwise it would have been impossible
yeah,
for them to escape.
exactly. So yeah, I'm glad we're in
So
agreement
I
on
guess
that.
what, did they get up back on the sub and just pilot the
Yeah,
sub
yeah,
back?
yeah.
I know
Just
it's
figured it
interesting
out.
how it suddenly cuts. It's like how I'm trying to remember. Are the bindings undone?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So the
that's been
power does
released at
that.
the
Yeah.
end.
I
Yeah.
want to know how they knew to open their eyes.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the only thing that I always thought, even as a kid, was they must hear the slam of the arc lid going down, and then they're not feeling any
Yeah.
wind at all, hearing any screaming. So that's when they do that.
I would
But-
basically, if I was him, I would wait basically another 20 minutes.
yeah,
Just to be
Yeah,
sure.
just to
Yeah.
be
You know,
sure.
Mary
Yeah.
would be going, is it
Yeah.
okay now? And I would
No.
go, well, let's wait
No.
a few more minutes.
This is me, and this might not be very romantic, but I'd be going, Marion, can you just open your
Oh,
eyes?
you're right. There you go.
That's a whole new way of saying ladies first. Yeah,
Yeah,
ladies
exactly.
first to die.
Yeah, yeah, ladies first. You know, and just tell me if your face is melting or not.
That's
'Cause,
right.
Yeah.
you know,
Because like if I hear a
Yeah.
scream, then I'll know I still need to keep my eyes shut.
yeah,
I have to
and
admit that
I'll stumble away.
That's right.
as horrific that scene was, I did get some satisfaction that Arnold died, and
Yeah,
obviously the
Oh
rest of
yeah.
the Nazis, but particularly him. But I did almost feel sorry for Belloc, and I don't know whether I should have done or not, because he did believe it, but it was just the fact that he was using it for his
yeah, he
own
was,
ends. I just think if he'd have once he'd touched the ark
yeah,
and seen that it was sand, if he'd have then realised and looked to her and like, oh, Belloc, you could have been saved, but no,
exactly. And I
you were
think
too arrogant.
exactly that. And I think also that, you know, with the, like Gary was saying, with the powers of heaven,
Mm,
they've seen that, you know, they've seen his thoughts, and he's effectively he's working with an evil regime that
yeah.
are effectively against
Yeah.
everything that heaven stands for. So
Mm,
although he's doing it for his own ends as well,
mm,
he's not taking a stand for right, is he?
Even
no.
if they would have
So
had a scene where he realizes it and tries to run,
Mm,
they would have had a scene where one of the spirits finds him or something. They would have
finds him, yeah.
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
No, really. I
on a
mean, they
on a
couldn't have.
train.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, you're right. And
mm,
I think the end of the film is great as well, because I love the fact that, you know, and it sets it in sort of like back to real world, where you've got the
mm.
bureaucrats, you know, when they're saying, where is the ark, and they won't tell him where it is, and it's being worked on by top men.
Top men, yeah. Top
Yeah,
men.
yeah.
Oh,
and
it's
and then it's just, again, that iconic scene where right at the end you've got all the boxes and it's being
mhm,
stored away. It's just fantastic. And again, Family Guy have made jokes about this as well.
yeah.
I think they put a movie star in a box in one episode, and they wheeled him into there.
Well, and to me, I kind of put the whole Futurama collection of celebrities and glass heads in this
Yeah,
category.
Yeah.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, so I mean, let's give it a rating.
Well,
So
wait, a couple things about this
yeah,
ending,
go
the
for it.
last scene, which I think is a brilliant last scene.
Mm.
First of all, I don't know about you, and I hope you don't think this is weird. I don't think Karen Allen looks more beautiful in any scene in this movie than she does in the end
Oh,
scene
yeah.
where that hat
hat.
cocked
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
certain way, and
Yeah.
she just looks
Amazing.
fantastic.
She did.
Yeah.
Well,
in that
it's because she's
last scene.
glowing with love because she's got a man, and I love that
Yeah.
it's a gentleness that brings him back, you know, because he's huffing and
Yeah.
puffing about what's
Yeah.
But she's
happening.
just like the quintessential 40s
Yeah.
look in that outfit
Yeah.
at the
And
end.
they lock arms
Yeah.
as well.
And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
yeah.
and then because they're equals.
Yeah.
You know, you can see
Yes.
that they're equals.
Mm.
And
She'll buy him a drink to cheer him up. You know.
there
I love that.
it's several.
That's Marion's answer.
Yeah.
Drink. It's
Several, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the whole idea that I think it's great that, I mean, clearly, okay, as an audience, we've witnessed the power of forces kind of beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real clever indictment of government, which
Yeah.
I actually happen to agree. Anytime movies can make government looks like idiots, I'm for. But the
Yeah.
fact that the way that the government, the US government, comes up with to deal with this kind of power is to put it in a wood box and put it in a warehouse,
Yeah.
you know, boxed up. I thought, boy, that's absolutely what they would do.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
you know, there's a great TV series which kind of kicked off from that image, which is, I don't know if you've ever seen Warehouse 13, which
Yeah.
is a great show, which is basically the idea about all of these, you know, arcane.
Yeah.
There's a storage facility for all these arcane things. It was a great show, but basically it riffed on that final
Oh,
scene.
I never watched it.
Oh no, it
I
really
think
is really, really a clever idea. It's
Yeah.
not just religious artifacts; it's all kinds of artifacts.
Mm.
Great, like 5 seasons, I think it was.
Yeah.
Great,
Sci-Fi
great
channel,
show.
wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it ended.
I remember hearing about it. But
It ended and it
just...
wrapped up. It didn't get canceled. It had great arcs, really interesting
nice. I'll have to check
stuff.
that out.
So yeah, absolutely. And it had a sister show called Eureka, which was about all these geniuses in this, and they were kind of sister shows where they kind of interchanged characters from time to time.
I remember that.
But I love the last scene of the pullback, the gradual pullback to where you see it's not just one aisle and then you see it more and more.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, how many more things like the Ark? That was a perfect way to end this.
Yeah.
It was.
And one last thing before we rate it. We haven't talked about the music. And I know that would be another half-hour conversation, but I want to bring up the music in the sense of, if this movie didn't have this particular John Williams score with, you know, the overture, you know, and all of it, and Marion's theme, which is a great kind of sub part of that, how much of the greatness of this movie, the success of this movie, is attributable solely to the music?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a critical element to the film, isn't it? I mean, you're right. I mean, you would still enjoy the movie, but I've always heard from, you know, reading from professionals, they say the music is arguably just as important as the visual, because you can have a banger of a film, but if the music doesn't hit and it doesn't give that feel of emotion to the audience that it's meant to do, then the audience can go away and go, oh, that's okay. But this music, it just rocks all the way through it, and it's just, you never get tired of it, you know. What about you, Sarah?
Completely in agreement. It needs it. You know, the music is the soul of this film, and these iconic moments, yes, they would have looked good on the screen, like we've said, like the staff with the Well of Souls, but it's the music that really brings that to life. You know, Marion's theme is the heart of the film, but that main theme, I'm struggling to think of another theme that just, you know, that people react to, that brings such, and possibly the Star Wars main theme, possibly, but there's something about that Indiana Jones theme.
It's great. It's great, yeah.
everybody, it just brings so much joy. Whenever I remember when it's on at the proms, it always just makes everyone so happy, young and old.
Yeah.
And it's got a bit of everything because it's got that big, march feel to it, but it's also, it's got the gentle stuff, but it has got that real epic feel like this. That you need to take notice of this film.
Absolutely, and I mean,
and
it
it's
goes
one of
back.
these. Sorry, John. I was just going to say
That's right.
it's one of these things to where, I mean, if I were to list like the 10 most iconic John Williams movie themes, probably Star Wars, only because it's just a part of your life now. But I would say that this is no lower than number 2. I mean, all you need to hear, whether it's in the movies or a commercial or like a homage like The Simpsons, whatever, all you need to hear are those 4 notes, da 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 da, and you instantly know what this is. All you need are those 4 notes.
Universally recognized across the world, and there's very few things.
Yeah, totally.
And one thing before we end, I just wanted that final scene. Did you know that Marion scene on the steps was a last-minute addition? It wasn't going to be in.
No, I didn't know that.
But
wow, really?
I think Karen and Steven Spielberg kind of petitioned for it because they'd not got that closure.
Yeah.
Why would they? I
think
can't imagine.
I think that the film would lose something if because we've been on this journey with these characters to not see them.
I can't imagine why the writer would think that you wouldn't need that kind of final scene with.
See, it was like
Indy,
a really hastily
amazing to
added
me.
scene.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's a great scene, and it basically, it, like you were saying earlier, Sarah, she gets him, she picks him up, which shows the connection between the two, and it's getting him to lick his wounds because he realized he was so close to fortune and glory, but the people that sent him on the quest have basically stitched him up and taken it from him. So yeah, I couldn't imagine it without that scene. But going back as well to what you were saying, Gary, about the music, I'm going to come back to what you said earlier in the review, where you talk about, does it strike you different now compared to the first time that you watched the film? And I would say that about the music, because when I was a kid and I heard that Raiders theme for the first time, I was like, this is fantastic, and I absolutely adored it. But every time since, I still adore it, but it's a comfort blanket for me.
Yeah.
It's like, if I'm going to watch it, I know that I'm going to be entertained by the visuals, but also that music is going to put me to a happy place throughout that film. And that speaks to the quality of John Williams, so moving to the next stage. Yeah, guys, starting with you, Gary, what would you rate this out of 10?
4.
Sarah's going to take another shot now to try and get you up to a 5.
Yeah, I'm trying to say something that'll make her just take shot after shot after shot.
You're right to me, you two. You really are.
I would say.
I don't know why I come on this show.
I would. Oh man,
This show sponsored by Smirnoff.
I mean, as much as I'm inclined to take a point off because they killed the monkey.
Nazi monkey.
I have
monkey.
No, he's just misunderstood. He was just misunderstood. Why they never did a prequel about how the monkey became a Nazi, I'll never know.
And why didn't the monkey have a Hitler tash as well?
10. It has to be 10.
Sarah?
I'm the same. I'm gonna be really, but it's I can't think of anything you could have added to it.
Yeah.
And anything that you take away from it would damage it. I mean, apart from like the plot hole with the U-boat. Okay, I'll give you that. But
well, that's on Russell T Davies.
It's not. Yeah, exactly. It's not. It doesn't take away from my enjoyment. So I can't. In all honestly, it's not enough for me to knock a point off. I think that would be very petty. But also just, everything about it, story, the direction, the casting, the performances, the the challenges they face, they had all that ridiculous temperatures in Tunisia, and people were getting ill, weren't they? I mean, that's the whole reason why that pistol scene exists, is because Harrison Ford was so ill. And I think just to have that quality despite all of these
absolutely.
challenges, and I think I delved into a bit of the production side of it, and George Lucas had real trouble getting this project off the ground. People didn't want to fund it. They didn't think an audience that time would want like a revamped 40s adventure, which just shows yet again how how out of touch studio execs
Absolutely.
are with everybody. So just to think that it even got made, and the fact that it was made so well, and it stands the test of time. I mean, I watched this with my boys.
Yeah.
Again, it's that multi-generational thing. I mean, I
It's great.
can't heap enough praise on it. I really do think it is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a 10.
Yeah. And what you were saying there quickly as well. I mean, I remember Spielberg saying that he wanted to direct a Bond movie, and George Lucas came to him and said, well, I've got a better idea. How about doing this? But it's set with Nazis as well. And he got him on the hook with that. So, but I will say, I would have always liked to have seen what Spielberg at that time would have done with a Bond movie, because I think he was in his his high point at that phase. Yeah.
No, well, no, he wasn't.
See,
I looked at it because he'd had that success with Jaws and Close Encounters, but then do you remember he made 1941, and by all accounts that was a bomb, and he actually.
If you watch the
Was it really?
if you watch the
they didn't
director's
want
cut
him to,
of 1941, it's not too bad.
But yeah, the execs didn't want Spielberg. They thought he was on the ropes, and it was Lucas who said no. He fought for Spielberg.
Yeah, and then he went from this to E.T. E.T. was the next one after this.
Yeah, and it's just phenomenal to think that people thought Spielberg was a loser.
I mean that goes back again to what you were saying, Sarah, about the idiot execs, because you could have 1941 might not been great for them in their opinion, but you look at the work that he'd done, and you just look at the catalog that he'd already done.
Yeah, but
and
in
think,
Hollywood, you're only as good as your last success or failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's always been true.
Zack Snyder.
The fact that the movie that he did before 1941 was Close Encounters didn't matter.
No, and that's another one we will talk about.
That's the fourth one, John. We have 6 more to go. For Sarah to tell us what she really thinks about things.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm up for that.
Once she gets,
I never shy away from telling you what I think.
Yeah, once Sarah gets to at least a 5-shot minimum, all hell breaks loose.
Right. There you go.
It goes to a very, very dark place. These reviews go R-rated at that point. Everybody, just
what?
Prepared.
Well, after I want John to give us his score, but then I have one last question, which I cannot believe we only mentioned in passing. But you go ahead, John.
Yeah. So for me, no surprise to anybody, but I'm going to be boring and say it's a 10 as well. This is just perfection, and it's an absolute joy for me. I never get tired of it. It's so good.
We have spent 2 hours talking about Indiana Jones, and I think we've only mentioned the whip once.
Yeah.
What do you think about that whole image of
I've
him with
let
the
you
whip.
down, haven't
Iconic.
I? I should have been all over
No, no,
that.
no, me too. But I'm trying to the iconic
Yeah.
things about Indy, even on the original poster,
Mm,
that gorgeous poster,
Yeah.
which I used to have at
mhm.
one point, the
Yeah.
one that looked like an old movie
Yeah,
poster
yeah.
with all the faces on
Mm,
the side. Um, about giving a hero like really just a gun and a whip. I
Yeah.
mean, what are your I mean,
I think it's a stroke of genius. I think there's too much reliance on guns and weapons. And to be fair, he doesn't use the gun that
No.
much. But yeah, to me, it completely makes sense. It's a useful bit of equipment, as we see, in that first sequence. Yeah, well, yeah. Obviously, I wanted a whip when I was a kid. I wasn't allowed one for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Didn't stop me trying. Any bit of string or a bit of elastic.
Yeah.
But again, as a kid, you latch onto these things and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool? But again,
Yeah.
that's just all part of the character, the
yeah.
heart and the whip. It's as integral as
I
the
mean,
lightsaber, isn't it? Really?
yeah. And I think for me, and I'm going back to the beginning of the film, I'm trying to remember, I'm pretty sure he puts the whip in the suitcase, doesn't he? With
Yes.
the pistol.
Mhm,
So he's kind of hinting at this point, they've dropped the
mhm,
hint of the whip, and you've had it early on as well. And but I think for me, when it really becomes iconic and when it's used right is when they're in the bar fight and
mm.
he uses it to get the poker out of the Nazi's hand.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
that is really well
Crazy.
done for me. And they go more into it in Temple of Doom and the others, but
Mm,
I always, as a kid, I loved the whip. I really
mm.
do. But I always tried to get my head around, how does he whip it? How does it wrap around and tie? And then it can
Yeah.
swing. And then I think, how does he undo
Well, they used to
it?
do that with Zorro too. Zorro used
Yeah.
to use
Yeah.
the same
But
thing
Yeah.
like that.
Harrison Ford did really do that, didn't he? He trained, and
Yeah.
so props for him for doing that.
Yeah.
One thing before we finish, can we talk about that Big Bang Theory episode where Amy completely destroys Sheldon with the
Yes.
fact that she watches Raiders with him, and she
Yeah.
says basically he didn't do anything. If if
He
in
should
if
have just
India
let them
if
have
India
it
hadn't been there, things would have played out.
exactly anyway.
Is
They
that
would have
the same?
died.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah. I do love that. And
Uh,
he's completely flummoxed by it, isn't
I
he?
mean,
Because he,
I never
yeah.
saw that episode, but she has a point.
Yeah.
she does have a point, but I suppose it depends if we go with this theory that it did wipe out the base, then if India hadn't have intervened, they'd still do the island thing, and what the Ark would still be there on a
Yeah.
random island.
Well, here's the
Would it
thing,
be
and
any safer than being anywhere else in a box?
well, I joked before about, well, did they get on the
Yeah.
sub and go back?
Mhm.
Clearly, I mean, is there like a missing scene somewhere where uh
Yeah.
Marion and Indy are trundling this big
Yeah.
ark, down to the
Yeah.
shore or whatever, like, oh, gotta rest,
Yeah. Yeah.
come
Yeah.
on,
Just
I mean,
arguing all the way.
clearly
Yeah.
there's the mechanics of how did they get the ark
Mhm.
back to, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think you're right. My with that, I always loved that episode. It did
Mm,
make me laugh, but I
mm,
always thought it was a Nazi base. So yes, the Nazis would have been destroyed on that island
mm.
and the Ark seals itself up. But my mind to get through that would be, if you're a Nazi regime and you've got a military, if that secret base is not responding to your
Mm.
calls, you would send in a team to investigate. So my thoughts would
Yes.
be they would have just gone and collected the Ark anyway and then taken it back somewhere else, whether that wiped
Well,
anyone else out.
Hitler would have they'd have probably still taken it to Hitler.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'd think, you know, yeah. I mean, it's very funny, but
yeah,
yeah, it's the fact that Indy. and marrying and everybody, you know, the good people, they strive for good,
Yeah.
and that can't be, you know,
Yeah.
poo-pooed at, because, you know, at the end of the day, that's, you know, that's what we live for, isn't it? That's why we're
Absolutely.
Well, then you
uh,
have to ask in this,
Yeah.
you
we're
know,
getting
I
very
mean,
philosophical.
you
I
have to
can't
ask
talk now, John, because I've had that drink.
with the ark
Philosophical.
would the ark have allowed itself to be taken deep into the heart of
Well,
Nazi Germany? I mean,
I-
there's that. That's a whole other kettle
well,
of
it is.
fish,
You're
but-
right, because you know, like you say, going to that sort of discussion and philosophical talk. You know,
Mm.
if the ark had gone, maybe it would have. You know, you talk about God taking it to allowing it to be taken to the center of Nazi Germany to basically wipe out.
Mm.
You know, the leaders of Nazi Germany. You know, that's what it'd do, because it's opposed to everything that they've done and what they've been doing to God's people. So yeah, it's great. Yeah, that's another discussion for another day,
Yeah.
definitely. But
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's,
yeah,
Instead of
yeah.
all
make you
this,
think.
instead of all this great stuff for a sequel, what do we get? We get Willie Jones and Short Round running around. So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. You call
all
him
right.
Dr. Jones, doll.
Jones.
So
I can't stand the second movie.
yeah, can you not? I like the
Oh,
second
Gary,
movie.
do you know what? That was the first film I ever saw.
Was it really?
I'm very fond of, for all its faults. I'm very fond of Temple of Doom. I can't wait to discuss that with you, bro.
Yeah, and there is a game on the way soon, by the way.
Well,
that I
Spielberg got a
want to
wife
get
out of it, so I guess it's not all bad.
Yeah,
There may or may not be video footage of a young me doing Willie Scott. Anything goes.
That
Just
doesn't make
putting
you
that
want
out
to
there.
tune into the next one. I don't know what will, viewer.
I think we're going to have to recut that for the next one, aren't we? We're going to have Sarah doing that, and then me and Gary sat at a table.
No, that needs to be like the new opening of. You said you wanted a movie-esque opening for your
yeah,
for
yeah,
Do
your
you want more
movie
viewers,
streams,
mate?
John. I can't think of a better one than Sarah doing Anything Goes
yeah.
as a little like 2-minute intro.
And then me and you, Gary, after that, jumping out of the top of Club Obi-Wan's all the way to the bottom into a car.
Go you, Sarah, you and Chris stage it on your front lawn.
Yeah.
And have the boys help and just do a whole production number.
Yeah,
but you know he'd do it if I suggested
he would.
The boys would be calling their friends, "My mom's gone nuts.
Yeah,
she's out on the front lawn singing."
Gary, that ship sailed a long time ago.
Yeah. But no, that's our review of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes.
Everybody, thanks for joining us. It's been an absolute blast, and we'll see you next week for the next one and surprise you with whatever it's going to be.
That's right.
Take care.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.